Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back on the Frankenhauler. All right guys, welcome back, and those who were watching, they will have seen my latest project, my new project, which is my 1954 Ford F600 truck that I'm going to put on a Toyota Coaster bus chassis. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, please like and comment and all that sort of stuff. It really does help out the channel. The Frankenhauler, so that is what I've decided to name it. There were lots of different comments of like Mater, which was out of the movie Cars, Tow Mater because it was a tow car, but in Australia it would have to be Tow Marto, so it has to be Marto, and it just, no, that's not going to work. Yeah, I looked at all the comments, and I think Frankenhauler is the best one, being sort of part Japanese, part American, part Canadian really, and part Australian, and just a bit of everything all mixed in together. I think that is a great name for it. There's also been lots of people asking about what I'm doing with the shell, and saying things like I should go and get it sandblasted or go and get it acid dipped. I'm not going to do either of those things because some may be upset to know this is going to be a patina build. So it's not going to stay looking like this. There's definitely lots of rust repairs I have to do, and there's obviously patina I need to blend and things like that. So it won't be all original patina. It will have some. It's going to be a bit of a mix. You'll get to see that later. Many of you may know that I actually, in another life, for 13 years was an airbrush artist, so I did artwork back in the early noughties, the sex spec days as people like to call them. So I do have some ability with the airbrush that I can put to good use on this build, but that will come a lot later. For starters, we need to get this cab tidied up and start rust repairing some of the things. There were people who were commenting saying, oh, wait, don't rust repair it until you get it onto the chassis. But if you know how these things mount, it's not stuff that's going to have to really change much. The way that trucks work is basically all trucks, and the buses included, are basically two steel rails, and the cabs and stuff mount on the top of it. So it's just how I locate it on the top, but the actual bulk of the cab is going to stay as it is. So I can start getting stuck into the rust repair, and if I have to cut into some of my rust repairs and things like that, I'm not that worried. So first things first, we need to fully strip this down. I've stripped it mostly down, but there's still things like the wiper, there's the dash in there, there's all these little bits on the front. So let's get them off to start with, and then we'll see if we can start cleaning it up. All right, so everything is stripped off of the cab, so I'm going to get in there with a pressure washer to first start with and just get it as clean as I can. All right, that is much better. Going through and cleaning it all gets a much better base to start with. So there was a lot of sound deadening on the back, which I've got rid of probably 90% of with the pressure washer. Cleaned up a lot of the floor. There's still more bits to tidy up, but the floor mostly, like I mentioned before, is looking good. I did find some nastier bits that I didn't really notice before. Particularly, look at the top of the A-pillars here. They're just complete toast. There's patches around the top. So there is a bit around the top that I need to tidy up. I'm going to have to make some patches for that. That's always part of it. Again, around the back window, I sort of knew there was some of the stuff there. Overall, still very happy with the cab of the trucks. Now, I know I said this is going to be a patina build, but I want to clarify exactly what I mean by that. So, yes, it's going to look all a bit beaten up on the outside, and I am quite happy with that. I don't mind that look. But inside the cab, I want it to be perfect, immaculate, pristine, all the steel repaired, painted. I don't want any rust on this truck at all. I want the whole thing to be perfectly neat and tidy. A bit of surface color is fine, but I do not want rust holes anywhere, so that is all going to be fixed. The inside has to be immaculate. I want air conditioning, I want sound deadening, I want cruise control, I want all of the bits and pieces to make this a vehicle that I can road trip comfortably. But one of the reasons I want to keep it patina on the outside is because I've proved I can do nice, neat paint jobs, and I can spend months sanding this thing. We all know that sanding does not make for good video. So yeah, I don't need to get perfect panel gaps on this. So I want everything nice and sealed and to fit nicely. But if the gap is slightly bigger on one side and things aren't perfectly aligned, I'm not that fussed on this build. So enough yapping, it's time to start fixing some of that rust that I don't want in this vehicle. All right, so I've got the cab stripped down now and cleaned up, and now it's a matter of working out where to start. And this is something that a lot of people ask me about, and I think most people do, having project cars, get bogged down because they get overwhelmed and then they sort of leave it and it sits aside and like, I'll do it later, and yeah, they can't work out how to move forward and get past that hump of where do we start, what do I do? And the way I always look at these things, if you look at it as a whole, it is too much. There's so much rust and it's such a big job, and I'll take it later. But I like to pick little tasks at a time and work towards that goal first. So instead of looking at it as a whole, I need to pick somewhere to start. I know that the floor has got a bit of rust in it, but I've got a whole bunch of rust panels on order that are going to turn up very soon for the bottom cab corners and things like that. Things like the firewall, I don't want to go to town on it yet because I'm sort of thinking that a lot of the front of the firewall may end up getting different holes and be modified a bit when I actually fit it to the cab. So I don't want to go to town on the firewall yet. So I'm sort of looking at the top half of the truck because I don't have any rust repair panels coming for the top half. The roof, I need an English wheel for, which I haven't got yet, so that's going to have to wait. So I really want to pick something, and I'm thinking a small job to start with is the front windscreen frame. There is rust along this edge, so I'm going to start with the bottom, and let's start patching some rust. So I picked this spot here as the most difficult part on the lower edge of this windscreen. The rest of these, the holes are basically just on the horizontal section, whereas just in this patch here, I need to replace the vertical there, the horizontal, and the vertical again along this front edge here. So I'm going to do it in a couple of stages because it's easier to make the piece. I've made a patch that is there, but you can see that this is a square patch and the windscreen curves horizontally, but it also curves vertically, like so. So I need to get on the shrinker stretcher now, and I'm going to shrink this edge and maybe stretch this edge a little bit to try and get it to perfectly match that shape, and then we'll show you how I blend it in. This machine here is the shrinker stretcher, and that's what I'm using to put a curve into this plate. So you can see it started as a straight 90-degree bend, but by shrinking this lower edge, it squished the bottom half together and created this curve, which is now the right shape to fit that window. So the way this works is, if you see inside there, as I come down, there's teeth that grab hold of the metal and then squish it together, and that is how it shrinks it. You can see the teeth marks on that bit of metal where it's grabbed it and squished it together, and that's created that shape. And then it's got alternative, it's got stretcher, which obviously does the opposite. It grabs and then stretches apart. So I'm going to swap those jaws in now and stretch the other side and try and get it to be a perfect fit. So I get my basic shape with a shrinker and then mark out the patch I'm going to repair, cut it out with the angle grinder and the air saw. It's then a matter of tidying up the hole with the air sander and getting a perfect fit with my patch. Once I'm happy with the fit, I use some magnets to hold it in place and then tack along the edges. I take my time making sure all the edges are perfectly flush while I'm tacking, and then I can just weld it all in solidly with the TIG. Just trimming the weld back using a combination of angle grinder and die grinder with some sanding bits on it just to get a nice flush finish and the last little patch. All right, so you can see that I've finished my patch here. It's not 100% perfect. I'm not too concerned about that. That is a super solid repair. I could spend hours and hours and get it absolutely perfect file finish, but that's not really the point of this. I don't need to go that far. We're going to move through and get this rust-free without spending a million hours on it. So let's cut out a strip here and do section 2 before we move on to the rest. So now I just work my way along and cut out trim pieces as I go. A lot of going backwards and forwards using a hammer and dolly to get the pieces to sit perfectly flush. If they're not flush when you tack them in, it's just going to make your life a lot harder later. Once I'm happy with all the tacks, I weld them all in just like before, taking my time and then tidying it up with the angle grinder and die grinder, etc. Alright, well that was a well-spent afternoon of work, and I have the lower edge of the windscreen done. I've just covered up the bare middle bits with some etch primer just to seal it in. The next thing I'm going to tackle is this sort of, it's an air vent opening area. I'm still not sure what I'm doing as far as the air vents go on this truck, whether I'm still going to keep this so that it can open and close and let air in, even into some sort of cowling system that vents it through to the interior or whatever. I'll still work that out, but either way, I need to fix this up, and the center bits, the straight bits are not too hard, but this obviously is going to be quite difficult to make these curves. I've got a bit of a plan. I'm going to do it in a couple of sections, so let's start playing. So you can see how effective the shrinker is. That is just from the shrinker. So one 90-degree fold and just using the shrinker, and by going backwards and forwards and laying it over the top, it's hard to get the perfect angle, but that is going to do quite nicely for this first corner. So what I need to do now is I need to start trimming it out and fitting that little piece into my space.
So as before, I trim out my hole and trim everything to shape, but obviously this is a little bit more complicated being this multiple curves. But doing it in sections makes it much easier. So here I'm having trouble holding the piece where I want it, so I use my third hand, which is this contraption I made out of a piece of Rio rod, which I might show you in a later episode. And as you can see, I'm sort of tapping it and moving it to make sure it all fits perfectly into place as I go.
Alright, so there is the first part in place doing what it needs to do. So now I'm going to clean it up and then make up the other side of the corner.
So after grinding back the welds on the first piece, I used the same process to build the other side of that corner. As you can see, the flange is actually much bigger than I need because it's easier to put a bigger edge into the shrinker stretcher and just work from there. But once I'm happy with it, it's easy enough to just mark out the excess and trim it off so that it all looks nice and neat and tidy.
Alright, so there we go. We have a corner repaired. That was the nastiest bit of the whole thing, and it actually turned out quite good. So now I need to go around and fix all of the rest of the holes all the way around the edge. But these ones should be a little bit more straightforward because they're on straight sections, not all this complicated curve.
So for this I used the same principle as I did in the corner, in two sections using the shrinker stretcher because there still is some shape. They're not perfectly straight, but I can just take my time and go through and repair section by section.
All right, and I'm very happy with that. It's not the prettiest, like I said before. I'm not going for a file finish. I'm just going for a repair the rust situation. And if I get the factory vent and fit it back in again, that fits in nicely. And yeah, we are rust free, which is the main thing that we're going for. So let's move on. All right, so the lower part now is all done. The basically this top front end is sorted, is looking good. Now we have to get into the more difficult stuff. Easy stuff is sort of out of the way. The next thing I need to tackle is this top edge here. And to start up here, I think we need to go inside and show you what's going on. So inside, we've got a bunch of rust here. We've got all these holes that go all the way through, all the layers here. And over the top, I can't really get the camera up there, but there's a piece that joins into the roof along the top here. But this whole top edge is absolute Swiss cheese. And I think to start trying to fix this edge, what I need to do is I need to remove this entire panel up the top here, take it out and see if I can repair that separately.
So I start to remove this with a combination of the angle grinder, the hammer and a screwdriver and a spot weld drill bit. I get a bunch of the spot welds, but there's so many pieces that are all rusted. The spot welds have sort of disappeared into a mound of rust, and it just, in the end, it was easier just using the angle grinder and just cut it out.
Ooh, that is not pretty. Basically, the bottom half of this truck all seems quite good. You know, the cab corners and stuff are gone mostly from the usual suspects. But this top half is all caused, I'm pretty sure, by the fact that somebody jumped on the roof at some stage. It got holes in it, it leaked, and it drained through and just sat in this top edge here and killed the top half of the truck. So that is ugly, but just means it's more to fix. We'll get there. right, this is, this piece would be really nice to get a replacement piece just to put in, but I don't believe it's actually available. So I need to repair it and make it good again. So this bit up here is where I'm going to start. And I'm going to sort of cut a section and sort of fill it in and just work my way along, trying to replace as little as possible to keep the shape there, because it's quite a complicated shape, very difficult to make the whole thing that it would line up perfectly. So let's just do it piece by piece.
So this is all more of the same process. It's just marking out the area you want, trim out a patch, make sure it fits the shape I need, and then trim out the rust, fit the patch perfectly, tack it in, fully weld it in. It's repetitive, but that's what this work is. It's just more and more of the same thing. But in the end, we get a solid panel, and that's what we're after.
All right, we're getting there. It's looking a bit like a patchwork quilt, but it's quite solid. And now I'm working on this section here, and it's quite a complicated shape, which I've been sort of gradually working together with a piece. I just put a fold in one edge, and then I've been working with the sandbag and just whatever pieces of dolly I can use to sort of sit it in and bash it and get it to the shape. And basically I'm just using this as my buck to keep molding it to that shape until I'm ready. Then I'll mark it out, cut it out and weld it in. All right, well that is not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's one solid piece of metal now all the way up. There's still a bit of grot in the middle I've got to fix, and this end is still horrible. But it's really time consuming, and that is all the time I have this week. So I think that means it must be time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, okay, today we're going to have a quick look at Henry Ford. So he was born on the 30th of July in 1863 in a farmhouse in Detroit, Michigan. His father was Irish, his name was William, and his mother's name was Mary, and she was the child of Belgian immigrants. Henry was the eldest of 6 children, and he stayed at school until the end of 8th grade, which I believe was probably pretty standard at the time. So 2 significant things happened to him in 1875 when he was 12. He saw his first steam-engined horseless carriage, and his father gave him a pocket watch. So he soon began disassembling and reassembling his watch, and by the age of 15 he was repairing watches for friends and local neighbours. In his farm workshop he experimented by building a steam wagon or tractor, but decided he did not like steam for light vehicles because of the dangerous nature of having a boiler on board. He also did not like electricity because of the expense of the trolley or tram wires, which would be run overhead, which would also obviously require a big infrastructure. Also, at the time, batteries, they weren't great. So from then on, his home experiments focused solely on petrol-based engines.
All right, I'm really happy with the progress on the truck this week. I'm actually sort of ploughing through the more difficult bits, and like I said, I've got a bunch of rust repair panels and stuff for the bottom, which makes things much quicker and easier to sort of get stuck into that. It's the tiny little patches that really suck up the time, but I've really powered on through it. I'm quite happy.
And it's super light to manoeuvre, which is a nice change.
Oh, it's very easy to move around the shop. It's quite easy. Handy having it on the trolley.
I think this would make like a really cool, like a sort of a bar cart kind of thing if you're into that in your house.
It's a very large bar cart.
Yeah, but like if you had like a big industrial space, anyway. I digress.
But next week I'll be back on the Alferrari. I have a bunch more stuff planned for that, and I plan on, until the Alferrari's done, sort of trying to intermix the truck and the Alferrari jobs, just because there's not necessarily stuff to do on the Alfa Ferrari every week. It's getting close to that pointy end, but we will definitely get it finished very, very soon. So more to come on both.
Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think about his videos. He loves reading your comments. And yeah, if you want to have him on this crazy journey of doing things multiple times, Patreon.
Yep.
And get to see the videos a day early with no ads. Oh.
All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
In 1875, he saw his first steamless horse engine.
Steamless horse engine.
Steam wagon or tractor. But he decided he didn't like the... So from this point onwards, his home experiments revolved around